One. And we are recording with Mr. Michael Vecchione on. I was listening to one of our first episodes actually, and I'm so embarrassed. I think for the first like 5 times you and I talked, I said Vecchione, and it's so cringeworthy. It's Vecchione, not Vecchione. It's not like macaroni, it's Vecchione. On Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023 at 4:39 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to support the podcast, please click the little red button. That's locals. Go get exclusive stuff, or you can buy the merch and support the podcast. Those are all my original graphic designs. Mike's been on here oodles of times before, and we're talking about his most recent book, Fallen Angel, which I actually, if you are on the locals, and you should be, you'll know that I mentioned it this morning, talking about how I like it because it gives you a target to put on something that otherwise doesn't have a target. The problem with guerrilla warfare is you can't find the insurgents versus a marching army. You have something to focus on. And what I like about Fallen Angel is it puts a face on the evil instead of just chaotic stabbings and rapes. It gives you a little more, because once you have a target, you can focus on that target. And then to get into a religious sense, I think you start digging deeper and asking God for guidance, and you don't feel so alone. You don't feel so chaotic. You start to look at it as the literal devil and go, and it's a worthwhile fight. But I'll shut up. And guys, in the description is the link to the book. I cannot recommend it enough. I don't get paid to say that. I don't have to say that. I don't even have to interview Mike. I keep having him back on because I genuinely like him and I genuinely think he's a good author. Mike, would you please introduce yourselves to everybody?
Yes, and thank you for the kind words, Tom. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
The My name is Michael Vecchione, and before I started to write books in earnest, and as part of what I do for a living and do to pass my time, now I'm an attorney, and I was the prosecutor for probably 30 years or more, and all of them in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. And when I left the office, I was chief of the rackets division, which gave me a lot of fodder for the stories that I have now put down on paper. I've done several. Tom has had me on and has been kind enough to to tout the books that I've done, but that's not the end, Tom. I just actually finished volume
Yeah.
two, or book two of Fallen Angel. I turned it in last week actually,
Well, you were
and it'll
hopping on the
be.
phone at the end of our last podcast, right?
Yes, that's exactly correct. I was, and I turned it in. I finally got it in, and I'm really pleased with it. I'm really happy with it. You know, it that's a difficult thing to say. If an author tells you that he loves what he's written, then he's a liar, because
Yeah.
nobody likes what they write. But I
Yeah.
have to tell you that I when I went back over this, and I just finished a real heavyweight editing process with a really good friend of mine who's an English, basically an English professor, and he gives me his ideas about content, as well as how the flow of the book, and grammar, of course, and spelling, and so we did a really heavy edit, and when I was done, I said, that's not bad. I really liked it, and I have to tell you that when I got to the end, I was very happy to press that button to send it into the publisher and say, okay, show it to the world now. That's the thing. So if things go well, it'll be out in time for beach reading, for the summer. And once I get a little bit of time under my belt here, I'm going to start book three. I have a 3-book contract, so I'm gonna do book three. But and as I got to tell you one thing, and then I'll get to the Fallen Angel. When you Just before we went on the air today, I was in the middle of doing a short story, a true crime short story a case that I had done as a defense attorney. And the reason that I've done it is because it was a real tragedy involving a woman who loved a husband who went away to the army and came back a completely different person, and began to batter her beyond belief. I mean, every day. It was an everyday thing. And she finally kicked him out. And he wouldn't just take no for an answer. He kept coming back. And it ultimately ended in tragedy. I'm not going to spoil the ending. But she was a sculptress, and she had studied to do this, and she became very good at her art. And as a result of this battering, and as a result of the way that she took steps to stop it, she essentially destroyed her ability make a living and to practice her art. And it was a heartbreaking story. One time, I have to tell you, I did a lot of cases in my career, and it's one that I'll never forget. And I'll just give you this little tidbit before we get to Fallen Angel. I was called to represent her by it was called in Brooklyn the 18V panel. It was a signed counsel plan for someone who couldn't afford to have an attorney. I volunteered my time for very, very low rates of return, in terms of retainer to represent her. And I got a call because I was on the homicide panel, and she was charged with a homicide. And I had to go to Kings County Hospital, which is a big city hospital here in New York. It's in Brooklyn, and it's and they were going to do the arraignment of her. She had been arrested the evening before, and it was time for her to be arraigned. She needed an attorney, and I was told to go to the hospital to do the arraignment at her bedside. And when I walked in to her room, there was no one there. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in terms of you expect someone to be able to, look at you and talk to you and to say something that gives you a sense that they're actually alive and in bed, maybe hurting, but it was not the case. She looked like a mummy.
Jesus.
She was completely bandaged, and she couldn't speak. It was a horrible experience. And then as I got to know her, this was the most peaceful, loving, talented woman that I had ever met. And it was a case that I don't know where she is today. And when I started to write this story, I looked to see if I could find her, because I really would like to put that as a coda on it. I haven't found it yet, but I haven't given up. So that's what I was doing. And I hope that when I'm done and I have it, send it in and get it in, I'm going to publish it myself on Amazon. It'll be an Amazon Kindle single, they call it. It costs 99 cents. And you don't need you don't need a Kindle device. You can go on and read it on the app. I hope you have me back, because I'd like to talk to you about it. I think it'll be, it's good. And it would be, something that kind of is pointed to a different, or maybe some other parts of your audience, the ladies and women in the audience, who maybe feel that there's not someone out there who can tell their story and listen to what they have to say if they're suffering the kind of horrific things that happened to this woman. And I think it's worthwhile. So we'll leave that on the shelf, and I'll tell you when I'm done. And of course, I'll send it to you, and you'll be able to read it and discuss it. So, okay.
Absolutely. But I mean, something like that, I would imagine, probably gives a little more weight to, it causes you to look at certain crimes and go, I mean, this is pure evil, right? And that probably
definitely
into something like Fallen Angel.
Definitely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I would have been able to incorporate this story into one of the Fallen Angel volumes without any problem at all. And for your listeners and viewers who haven't heard it, Fallen Angel is the story of a prosecutor who was recruited by a secret government agency to fight the devil, who has come to Brooklyn and is responsible for horrific crimes designed to upset the good order of society and peace that in various parts of the borough. And book 2, the devil has gotten to the point of the crimes that he has instigated are all with the point of essentially destroying families. And if you destroy family life, then society crumbles, in my opinion. And that's what book 2 is all about. So,
hell yeah.
Fallen Angel is the prosecutor. It's no secret, is modeled after the former chief of the rackets division in the Brooklyn DA's office. And his name is Michael. His first name is he's Michael Gioca, and I gave him that name because he's a gambler. He's a risk taker. He's the kind of guy who is not afraid to take on a battle like this, and was not afraid to kind of push the envelope, not necessarily criminally or illegally or against his ethical bounds, but to, for instance, if there was a witness who was the kind of witness who one person or a jury might not like, but was very important for a case, there were lots of times his colleagues would say to him, you're crazy. You can't call them. They'll never, they won't like him or like her. And it was Gioca's position that, well, they don't have to like him. They have to believe him. And I will find a way to make sure that they believe him. That's his kind of his philosophy. And so that's why we called him. I called him Gioca, because in Italian that means gamble or gambler, and it's an easy. By the way, but it's an easy name to type too. It's only 5 letters as opposed to Vecchione. If I could,
Yeah.
I couldn't type that so many times.
I'm
So
looking at it on my keyboard right now. It is a little simple.
it is. It is. It's very simple. So so the last time we were here, we talked about the case that got Michael to the attention of the agency, or the secret government agency that ultimately hires him. But he's recruited by an old friend of his, who is a Monsignor in the Catholic Church, who was an exorcist. And given the fact that this is battle with the devil, the agency where the whole idea of fighting Satan came about was through the Office of Exorcisms in the Vatican. So when they realized that it's things of this nature that that fit a pattern that was happening in other parts of the world was now happening in Brooklyn, the agency hired or recruited this Monsignor Sal Romano, who had been an exorcist, was a Brooklyn native, knew the borough, and more importantly, knew a prosecutor who he had grown up with. Who they were altar boys together. They played ball together. They went on dates together. And the Michael Gioca character went one way to the law, and Sal Romano went the other way to the Catholic Church. But now he's asked to come back, Sal is, and talk to his buddy and recruit him for this job of taking on the ultimate evil. And the way that he does it is by not telling them what they're doing. They kind of watch Michael do a case. He has a very difficult case that has been put in front of him, and there are some twists and turns and things that don't make sense. And Michael, of course, at this point doesn't understand why certain things happened and why witnesses didn't show up, or witnesses are now changing who they were and what they are, and things of that nature. That was a case that the agency recognized was one that was instigated by Satan. So Michael gets the case, and he handles it perfectly. And after the case is over, he's recruited and he's asked to take over this position, take this job, because it's necessary. And he agrees. In the book, I think the character says that, if I turned this down, my father would never speak to me again, because he's a churchgoer. He goes to church and his sons would
And my
think that
sons would call him a pussy. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I fucking love that line.
So he gets past this first case, and now what he has to do is he has to work as Rackets Division Chief, as well as the guy in charge of this battle with the devil, because it has to be secret. The world can't know that Satan is out there doing the things that he's doing, because the agency feels and the Vatican feels that this would create chaos. So everything has to be on a down low. So Michael the agency clears it with the district attorney, who is Michael's boss, and they tell him that he's being recruited for this super secret government work, and they don't tell him what the nature of it is, and of course he's a politician, so he says, "Yeah, this is great because it looks good for me. One of my boys is,
Yeah.
So,
Yes, man.
Yeah. So there's so Michael does well, obviously, with the first case, and when he goes to the DA and tells him that the DA calls him actually and says, "Listen, I just got this call from a former attorney general in the United States, and they want you for this super secret organization, for this government project, top secret. And Mike, are you going to take it?" And Michael has already told them that he is, and he tells the DA, "Yeah, I'm going to take it." So he lets him stay as the chief of the Rackets Division, so that's his cover. But all of the work that Michael does, he has to do with detectives and agents who believe that he's the rackets division chief, not the head of this, or not the prosecutor in charge of fighting Satan. He never tells them that it's Satan behind these crimes. So in the second part of the book, case number 2, he gets a call one day, and it's the July, right after July 4th holiday. And it turns out that on July 4th evening, an off-duty police officer is with his girlfriend, and they visit there. They live in one of the neighborhoods that's heavy in crime in Brooklyn. And he has this, the cop is a young cop who grew up in the New York City housing projects, which is the public housing here in New York. And as he grew up, he came to kind of admire the police officers who were stationed in and around the housing projects, and who were protecting the citizens, et cetera. And every day he would come home from school, there'd be one particular cop at his door, and they'd have a discussion. And the cop, I call him Robbie Thomas, and he gets to the point where he says, I think this is what I'm going to do when I grow up, so to speak. And he does. And when he graduates the police academy, he could go anywhere in the city. They could assign him to anywhere. He asked to go back to the housing project where he was raised, so that he could help and take care of the people who he says grew him up, so to speak, raised him. He became a man because of these people. He was beloved. And in real life, he was beloved as well. And I changed his name, and I'm not going to get into his real name, but just in the book, he's called Robbie. His father was a big Brooklyn Dodger fan, and Jackie Robinson was his favorite, of course. And he named his son, they called him Robbie after Robinson, Jackie Robinson. So he is, he's loving life, and people love him, and he helps people out all the time. And he's off on July 4th, and he has this brand new motorcycle. He picks up his girlfriend, and before they head out to wherever they were going that night, they stopped at a grocery store, a bodega in his neighborhood. And there's all people all around the neighborhood, and it's 4th of July, and people are celebrating. And in the book, there's a guy who is sitting on the curb, the street, across the street from the bodega. And he sees Robbie pull up with his girlfriend on this beautiful brand new motorcycle. Now, let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a guy who had come from Brooklyn, comes from that neighborhood, and had a girlfriend. And they went down a week or two before to Baltimore to a party. And the people at the party told them to make sure that they brought some Coke with them. So, not knowing where to buy Coke in Baltimore, they kind of wandered the street a little bit. They hit on some guy who was selling, and it turns out it was an undercover cop. And he and the girlfriend get arrested, and they're put into the Baltimore jail on a Friday evening. They're not going to be arraigned until Monday at the earliest. And he is really upset. She's really upset. And when it comes to the arraignment, the judge releases him, or sets bail on both of them, but only he has money, and he only has enough to get himself out of jail, and he has to leave his girlfriend down in Baltimore. Tells her, don't worry. Comes back to Brooklyn. He says, I'll raise the money, and I'll come back and put your bail up, and we'll get you out. Right now, in the real story, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
This guy comes back to Brooklyn, and he starts trying to raise money, but he's has no luck. No luck. He's nobody in the street that he wants to. He feels, well, you know what? Everybody's out in the street. I'll hold them up. I'll try to get money. But nobody's got any money. It's a poor neighborhood, so he's not doing very well. And he's kind of at his wit's end. He has nowhere to go. And he's sitting on that curb thinking about what had happened or what was going on. And a guy comes up to him, a strange looking guy, sits down next to him. And our thief looks at him and says, who are you? He goes, I'm in the area. My name is Jizz. And says, I know what you're looking for. Says, I know how I can help you. Points across the street to the cop on the motorcycle. Said, you see that? See that motorcycle? It's worth a lot of money. Worth a lot of money. You got a gun. I know you do. Go rob the guy. And he talked, and he says, nah, get the fuck out of here. And Jizz stays at him. And he then kind of really gets to him. And he says to himself, fuck it, I'm going to go over and do it. Now, the cop's girlfriend had gone into the bodega to buy whatever she was going to buy. So it was the cop alone on the bike. And he had taken his helmet off and he's just sitting there. And the guy walks up to him and basically holds him up. Cop says to him, are you crazy? I'm a cop. He goes, the guy says, I want the bike. He says, I'm a cop. Next thing he knows, boom, boom, boom. He shoots him, kills him. The bike tips over, cop tips over, and the guy, now the bike is on, the cop is still straddling the bike, but he's under it. The bad guy comes over and tries to lift the bike up so he can take it and get it out of there, and he can't get it. He can't get it. And if now people see what's going on. And he just can't get the bike up. But in attempting to do that, he touches every part of the bike.
Yeah.
The bad guy in the book,
City.
as well as so he's got fingerprints. He's got people. Everybody out there can see what's going on. The girl, his girlfriend comes out of the bodega. She's screaming, and our shooter takes off. The next day, now in the book, the next day, Michael gets called to the scene. And he gets called to the scene because they believe that meaning the secret group, that's Romano, and the head of the group is a guy by the name of Caldwell, John Caldwell, who used to be the AG. They see they see that it's a cop. He was off duty, but they know he's a cop. They knew what his background was, that he came from the projects.
Cop, yeah.
They knew what that would create in the projects, that it would be that there would be unrest. And they say, go out there. We think it's him. So Michael gets in his car, goes out there, and when he gets there, there's almost a riot going on. Just as they predicted that there would, and the police are trying to hold back the rioters. They had to call that the demonstrators and rioters, they had to call in reinforcements to hold back the crowd. And Michael meets the guy, the detective, who is in charge of the investigation, and he's worked with him before, so he knows him. I think I call him Tony in the book. I don't remember. And in real life, his name is Tony. So he says, Tony, what do we got? And he says, we have this young police officer. This guy's a hero here. Everybody in this neighborhood loves this kid. He's been on the job. He could have gone to anywhere in the city. He chose to come back home. So he's really that kind of a guy. And he's the kind of cop who off duty worked with kids, did all kinds of things that really were made himself and engendered himself to the neighborhood, as far as the way that he approached things, and they loved him. So you can imagine what this crowd was why they were outraged. But they were outraged for a reason different than what you might believe right now as I'm talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
There was a person in the crowd who Michael sees, who's a rabble rouser. This person with these red dreadlocks, and he's really kind of getting them all worked up. And what's he telling them? And why is he getting them worked up? He's telling the crowd that it was white By the way, the police officer is an African-American kid. He's telling him that white police officers,
Yeah.
undercover police officers, were shaking him down or were hassling him, and they shot him because he's a black cop. And everybody believed it because there's a lot of police brutality in that area. There was at
Mhm.
the time. Of course, it was all total bullshit. And who does it turn out the dreadlock guy to be? You can guess,
Lucifer.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he says, listen to the detective, I'm going to go over and talk to these people and tell them that that's wrong. This was a robbery. We got witnesses. Everything is nothing is like this guy is telling you. So when he approaches the crowd, expecting to confront the guy with the dreadlocks who's really going crazy, and now there's a point where they have riot cops there because there really is going to be a problem. Michael looks around. He's gone. The guy in the dreads is gone. He's the kind of guy who, I mean, I'm sorry, he's the devil has done his work. And as you see throughout the book, once that is done, he takes off. He's no longer around. You can't find him anymore. So Michael is able to kind of he points to, he sees a couple of the citizens in the crowd who he thinks will listen to him, and he calls them aside and he talks to them and he tells them, this is a robbery. This has nothing to do with cops. The cops got here after the thing was over, that kind of thing. And he settles things down. He settles things down. And at the end of the afternoon or the morning, he speaks to the detective, and the detective tells him, says, listen, we're not through with the investigation. We've got, a witness telling us that it was a robbery, and the girlfriend tells us it was a robbery or attempted robbery. But we still have things to do. Still got more to go. Okay, Michael says, get back to me. Let me know when you have something more, and I'll go back. Now he goes back and he speaks to Romano, and I may not have this in the exact order, but when he tells him about the rabble rousing, he tells him about the guy disappearing. Romano is certain that it's the devil, and he tells him, it's your case. You stay with it. So what happens is he finds out that at the end of the day, at the end of the investigation, not the end, but at some point in the investigation, he finds out that the cops have identified three witnesses, absolute solid witnesses, who say, I was right there. I saw the gun. I saw the guy pull the gun. I saw him ask the cop for the motorcycle. I saw everything. And this is what the cops didn't learn until well after Michael had gone. They tell him that when the cop fell, the shooter grabbed the motorcycle and he grabbed it to try to lift it up. That, of course, gave the cops the incentive now to dust it and come up with prints. So they have three, as the case goes on, and in real life, this is what really kind of boggled my mind later on. They had three eyewitnesses. Okay. They still hadn't had an identification yet because they didn't know the name of that person. But the police were certain, and the detective tells me when I did the case, and Michael in the book, don't worry. If these people saw him, he's from around here, we'll come up with his name. So they put the prints in. The prints, they take prints off the motorcycle. They are able to get valuable prints, which means that there's enough of the ridge images from the fingers on the motorcycle through sweat, grease, whatever is on there. They got enough. So now they gotta identify the prints, and the way they do that is simple. They go back to police headquarters and they put it into a computer, and if his prints are in there, or her prints are in there, whoever it is, they didn't know at that point. I'm sorry, they did know it was a man. Excuse me. then the identification will come up and they'll identify. So they are able to do that. So they have, and they come up with a name. They come up with a name. Now they have to find this guy, right? So they go around and they ultimately, make a long story short, they find him. Okay. Days later, he turned, I forgot if he turned himself in or if he is arrested. I don't
I think
remember.
he turns himself in
Yeah,
the
he
book.
turns himself in. Yeah, turns himself in. And now it's a matter of trying to get him to give a statement, because at this point that would be the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
His prints came back on the bike. Eyewitness 1, eyewitness 2, eyewitness 3. By the way, lineups were held with our guy in 3 separate lineups. Eyewitness 1 picks him out. Eyewitness 2 picks him out. Eyewitness 3 picks him out. Okay. Fingerprints are unique to every human being.
Mm-hmm.
There are no 2 fingerprints alike. So it's him.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got 3 IDs. Okay. What's missing at this point?
Confession.
The gun.
Oh,
Huh?
yeah.
The gun and a confession. Yeah, excuse me. I jumped ahead a little bit. The cops talk to him, and he does give a statement. And he tells him the story I started with about being in Baltimore and needing the money, coming back to New York to try to get the money to get his girlfriend out, and that he was he was a terrible thief, I guess. He couldn't even get enough good rob. I mean, he couldn't rob people and he had a gun. I mean, it was just a matter of this guy being, I guess, a bad guy.
Yeah.
Bad at his job as opposed to being a good guy. He's a bad guy, but he was not good at what he did. So, so he confesses and he gives it up, and he tells him why he did it, and that he admits to trying to steal the guy. The cop, he didn't know he was a cop, of course, until the cop said to him, I'm a police officer. And then he didn't make a difference. He killed him anyway. And then he couldn't get the bike up, and he admits it. He said, I touched it. I pulled it. I did. So it's a solid case, Tom. It's a solid case. In the book and in real life, this is basically a parallels. It's the same thing. The cops then say to him, we're going to call the DA to the precinct, and you give it an on-camera statement. He agrees, and that's when I get the call. Right? It's my case. I go down, and I sit in a room with him, and in the room is myself, the bad guy, a detective, Tony, who was the guy in charge, and the stenographer and videographer. They were basically the same guy. So I sit him down, read him his rights, and he's as comfortable as you could possibly be at the table. He's got a soda in front of him. They let him smoke. So I made sure that he took sips of his soda. Michael makes sure he took some smokes, because later on, if you argue to the jury that it was coerced, you want to be able to say, if you're the prosecutor, this looks coerced. Look at how comfortable this guy was.
Fed, he's hydrated. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not jumping around. He's not going crazy.
Not panic attack. Yeah.
Exactly. So so I did all of that. And now Gioca in the book does something that Vecchione in real life did. And that was take a chance. Because that's how I was as well in terms of being a prosecutor. I took chances, and I felt that, the chances were worth it. I wasn't reckless. I did what I needed to do. And he says to him, so tell me where the gun is. He hesitates, and he tells me. And he tells Gioca where the gun is. Tells him exactly who gave it to him, where it is now. And they ask him, is it still there? And he goes, yeah, he still has it. So they go to it was his buddy's house. They went to his buddy's apartment. Guy lived either above or below his mother, the bad guy's mother. And after he shot the cop, he brought the gun to him and said, "Hide this for me." And the guy did it. He's a friend. He was going to do it, and he did it. But when the cops got there, he didn't hold it back. He gave it up. So now they had the gun, and I'm still at the precinct, and Gioca's still at the precinct. And while I'm talking to him, they get back to the precinct with the murder weapon, or what turns out to be the murder weapon. Of course, we didn't know it yet because it hadn't been identified as such yet. And now it was, do I ask him this question? And if he gives me the wrong answer, or the answer that's not the truth, because I believed it was based on what he told me. I mean, how many guns are going to be in this guy's apartment when he told us where to go?
Where it is, yeah.
So I took a chance and I said to him, and Gioca does the same thing, shows it to him. Make sure the camera sees it. And he says to him, "Do you recognize this?" And gets the answer. That's the gun that I used that night and I shot the cop with. Bingo. Now we had a case, Tom, as strong a case as I had ever seen, to tell you the truth. 3 eyewitnesses, fingerprints, the murder weapon identified on camera, a confession, and the guy who the killer gave the gun to after he did the killing. Can't get a better case than that. Right? So I figured there's no way this guy's going to trial.
Yeah.
And so does Gioca. Gioca figures there's no way it's going to be a plea. But he hadn't figured in yet, Gioca hadn't figured in yet how the devil was going to get involved, because he knew that he was involved. He knew that he knew in his heart of hearts that he was behind this, and putting everything together. Finds out also, by the way, the bad guy talks about this guy Jizz, and talks about him basically instigating the crime and telling him and giving him the idea as to how to do it, and then put him together with the rabble rouser the next day. Gioca has a good feeling that this is the killer. I'm sorry, that this is the devil behind this whole thing. So, but he doesn't take a plea. He goes to trial. And it's okay, it's great. Gioca says, "I got enough. It'll be my first known win, because I won before, even though that was the devil. But this one I know about, and this will be my, the first time that I win." And he's excited, and he does the case. He does a great job. The 3 eyewitnesses testify without any problems. The gun goes into evidence, the confession goes into evidence, the fingerprints go into evidence. Everything is terrific. The defendant has no defense. Now, under the law, you can't hold that against him, but he doesn't say anything. He doesn't have any problem at all. And but I remember this as if it was yesterday. The jury doesn't, we do summations. Judge gives them the law, and they're taking a long time with a verdict. Now, throughout the entire trial, the dead cops, or the cop who's dead, who was killed, his family used to sit in the courtroom. And in the book, Gioca establishes a relationship with his mother and father, and I think his brother. And they were all, pleased as punch that, the case went in well, and, they doesn't bring your child back, but there is a measure of closure if the person is responsible, is held responsible. And I remember I had to sit there with him, and what was going on. And Gioca, has to talk to them, and they still had faith. They still had faith up until the day that one of the worst days that I've ever had as a prosecutor comes about. And same thing with Gioka. This really affected him. Unbeknownst to him, and I'll get to what happened that affected him. Unbeknownst to him, in the days the jury was deliberating, a court officer who had been assigned to the trial was out in front of the courthouse and just happened to notice two of the female jurors outside in front of the courthouse in this little park that's out in front, talking to a woman who was pushing a baby carriage. And I left one thing out that I forgot, but I'll get to it. Pushing a baby carriage, and they're chatting it up and talking, and and the court officer kind of chalked it up to, hey, this is downtown Brooklyn. A lot of people know each other. A lot of people come down here for shopping, go to court, businesses and stuff. They know each other, and they're chatting it up. And he watches, and the conversation breaks up, and the jurors are nodding and laughing and chatting, etc. And he stays where he's standing, and the woman with the baby carriage comes past him and pushes past. And that's when he notices she's walking with the left side of her face facing the cop. And he notices this strange mark on the left side of her face. Now, for those of your readers, or soon if you read part 1, you understand that essentially the mark on the left cheek is the mark of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
In the other book, in the first story, there's someone with the mark. In this, there's someone with the mark. Jizz has the mark, which we later find out. The rabble rouser, in the book, I use another way of identifying the devil, and that's with the red dreadlocks in certain situations. So he notices, but he doesn't give it any thought. I mean, so what? The woman has a mark on her face. So the jury continues to deliberate. No verdict. Finally, they get a note from the jury. The judge does, and the note essentially is, we're unable to reach a verdict. The judge says, go back. They go back. No luck. Days go by. No luck. Unable to reach a verdict. Judge has no choice at that point, and he declares a mistrial, a hung jury. Now, the defense is happy because there's no conviction. Michael Gioka and real Michael were unhappy beyond belief. I mean, how do you not win a case with this kind of evidence? I was beside myself, and so was Gioka. And I'll never forget this. The judge was equally upset. He turned, after he dismissed the jury, he turned to me and he said, when can you be ready to try this case again? I said, Judge, tomorrow. And Gioka says the same thing. The defense attorney is like, oh, yeah, some time. The judge says 2 weeks. I think I said 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks. Back here in 2 weeks, we're doing this case again. And only then, only after the trial is declared, a mistrial is declared, the hung jury, does the court officer ultimately tell Michael Gioka what he saw.
Yeah.
And that's after Michael had gone to the jury room to talk to the jurors to find out what went wrong, what's gone, what happened here, because he thought that they were the kind of jurors who, would vote to convict, particularly with this kind of evidence. It couldn't have been a racial thing because the witnesses were all African American. The deceased was African American. Parents sitting in the audience, the defendant's African American. It wasn't a racial thing. So I couldn't understand. And because in Brooklyn at the time, there were racial issues were a problem, and you had to be wary of them when you were picking juries and trying cases like this. The jurors said to Gioka, those two, pointing to two women who sat even at that point away from the jurors in the corner, said they're not voting to convict this guy. They wouldn't listen to us. We tried, couldn't convince him. Only after that conversation, the court officer, by the way, who was outside on the street, was there as well. And he essentially calls Gioka and he says, I didn't say anything to you because I didn't think anything of it. I didn't bring it to the judge's attention because I didn't think anything of it. But I saw this woman outside, and he describes the conversation and the way that they were chuckling, the way that they were chatting and nodding their head, etc. And Michael says to him, did you see her? Did you get a good look at her? He says, I got a look at her as she passed me. And but the only thing distinctive, Mr. Gioka, is I saw this big, like fucked up mark on the left side of her face. Next day, or a couple of days later, Michael goes back into the courtroom. Of course, he can't tell anybody what the reason is. He just calls it jury tampering or jury in. The people were, trying to influence the jury, and the judge essentially has a hearing, talks to the court officer. The court officer tells him what he saw, and Gioka then does something that probably hadn't been done in the book. I say it, and it's true. In Brooklyn, and I couldn't tell you how many years, he asked that the jury be sequestered, the next jury, meaning that they would not be able to go home after the trial was over, that they had to be kept together in a hotel and brought to court by court officers every morning, escorted from court to the hotel every night. And only after there was a verdict or another hung jury, if there was one, would they be able to then go home and live their lives. Now, Tom, I got to tell you, in real life, that would never happen. I mean, those days are over. I mean, I've had a lot of sequestered juries, but once money became an issue with the courts, et cetera, it was costing too much. They decided to do away with that, and the jurors were sent home every night, admonished not to talk about the case. Told you don't make up your minds, don't read anything in the newspapers, those kinds of things. Don't watch television. So I kind of brought that back in the book. I brought that idea back as a way for Michael to combat the evil one. He couldn't get to them if they were guarded 24 hours and if they were, 24 hours a day and they were together all the time. And the judge went along with it. Judge bought it, said, yes, I'm going to sequester them. Of course, the defendant and the defense attorney went absolutely nuts. And so jury number 2 is picked. The case goes in as well as it did the first time. Maybe even better, because the witnesses were ready for the cross-examination, et cetera, And Mrs. I had Mr. The mother and father of the cop sitting right behind me in the courtroom in Brooklyn. And I guess in other courtrooms too. The prosecutor is the closest one to the jury, table-wise. So Gioka makes sure that the mother, father, and I think it was his brother, sit right behind him in the first row of the courtroom, got permission to have them do that for the entire trial. So I'm sorry, second row, because the first row was for the press, second row. And they were there. And the jury, every time the jury would come in the morning, Gioka made sure that the family was sitting there and they would see them. And during the course of the trial, one of them had to testify to the identification of the body. So they knew that this was a family of the defendant. And the case went in beautifully. And Gioka remembers that when they announced this time, by the way, the jury came back in like a day and a half with a verdict. And when the judge asked the foreperson to stand, it was an African-American woman who had to, in the book, had to identify with the mother of the deceased. I mean, they were around the same age. She had kids, he had kids, lose your son. She had the verdict in her hand, piece of paper. She didn't need to read it. And when the clerk asked, how do you find? She turned in the book, turned to the mother and father of the cop, put a big smile on her face and announced guilty. So that made
Yeah.
everybody was obviously the parents outside. Gioka gets hugged and thank you and etc. And everything settles in. Gioka's all happy. He goes back, has a drink. He meets. I'm not even sure what he did. He talks to Romano. They may have gone out to dinner. They did. They did go out to dinner. And the next morning, Michael Gioka gets a call from Romano and says, "Did you turn on the TV?" or something of that nature. He turns on the television and there's a report on an all news station, local all news station, about an incident that happened the night before, around the time, well, let's say an hour or so after the jury verdict. What happened was the jury four-person, this lady, her daughter's birthday was the next day. And the courthouse is situated in a section of Brooklyn that is a big commercial section with a lot of department stores and specialty stores and clothing stores and things of that nature. One of the biggest ones was Macy's. You probably have heard of Macy's department store. And the lady went to Macy's to buy her daughter a present, right? She walked back with the birthday present to the subway and got on the subway, got down onto the subway platform. And as she was waiting for the train, as it was coming in, a person comes behind her with a big black mark on her left cheek and pushes her in front of the train and kills her. That's the way part two ends, and Gioka is beside himself and realizes that there's going to be a price to pay for each of these, for taking on the devil. And there are other ways during the course of the book that happens. He goes, and most of the time, it's and in the next case that we talk about, it's one of the main witnesses who pays. And let's just say that the devil does not like to lose, and he has to extract some kind of penalty. If he can't affect the case so that it doesn't get to the point of him losing, that's all well and good. That's great. But if he does lose, then there's a penalty that's extracted in each one of these situations that Michael has to concern himself with, Gioka. And he has to concern himself with it when it touches, at one point, it touches his family. And he says at one point, and I'll tell you this, it may not be in this part, maybe later, but I'll say it because it's worth repeating it later on. No, I'm sorry. It was in the first part of the book when he's talking to Romano. Romano tells him, what the plan is and what he's being asked to do. He says, "Well, why wouldn't he just kill me? Why would he allow this to occur?" And Romano's point is, Romano says to him, "You're missing the point. He wants you and everyone to suffer.
Yeah.
He wants you to be humiliated, and he will do it each and every. That's where he gets his jollies, so to speak. It's not if he kills you or he kills somebody, that's it. It's done. But he wants to be able to come back at you again and come back at you again and come back at you again. And and while that's happening, he's destroying parts of Brooklyn and life in Brooklyn and the peaceful, serene life that Brooklyn has become. It's expensive to live in Brooklyn, and at one point, until just recently, until after the pandemic, crime rate was as low as it could be, low as you could think. But a lot of wealthy people have moved in. A lot of people who are recent college graduates who've gotten jobs on Wall Street have moved into Brooklyn. There's a lot of a lot of clubs have opened up. I mean, life has, kind of evolved in terms of Brooklyn, and it's in a lot of ways even more popular nightlife wise than Manhattan is. So the point is that the devil wants to upset all of that, and that's why he's here. And the idea of killing the juror, I think I write about it, or at least I leave the understanding that the smile when she announced
Yeah.
guilty, that was the kiss of death.
Yeah.
That was, she had signed her own death warrant, and that was it. And later in the book, there are other ways that the devil gets back at him, and in book two, I'll give you a little bit of a preview. He actually does go after Michael, and so you'll see how that turns out at some point. So um, it was, now let me just tell you a little bit about my reaction when this happened in real life, just a little bit. I know
Sure.
you got to run, but I'll Tommy, I have never been so affected by a verdict like this. It made me question my ability. If I could not win a case where I had three eyewitnesses, fingerprints, the gun, a confession, and the person to whom the gun was brought after he killed this police officer, I said, maybe I need to hang him up. I
Yeah, that's a
can't believe
layup.
that I didn't win this
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. That's a gimme.
Turned out that the real reason for the mistrial was a pure racial reason.
Yeah.
Pure racial.
We're not putting we're not putting another brother in jail,
Correct.
even though he killed a black guy.
Correct. Correct. That's exactly what happened. So anyway, that is story number two in Fallen Angel. And story number three, I'll give you a little preview, is involves a cop too, but it involves a cop in a different way. And it is a beginning of also an attack on there's a kind of a religious attack in it too, in terms of neighborhoods and stuff. And then part four is a pure religious attack that, so that the devil instigates. But in any event, I don't want to get ahead. You might not ask me back. So if I
Oh,
tell you
shut up.
everything,
Oh, shut up. It's no, this is, I mean,
so
this is, I didn't want to knock all this. I mean, obviously it's episode 2. I didn't want to knock it all out in one episode. I'd rather flesh it out and really go into it, because I mean, ultimately these are real stories. So I mean, that's
yeah,
wild in itself.
they are. They are. And that's why I got to tell you, tomorrow night, believe it or not, the night before I have to have the surgery, I'm going out I've been doing library talks here
Okay.
in on Long Island. There's a group that sets up these true crime, I guess, kind of confabs where you go out and people who are interested in true crime come out to listen to the speaker. And I was recruited to do. I've done four of them already. I've got one tomorrow, and I've got another two coming up, and it'll probably be a couple more. But tomorrow's also a part advertisement and push for Fallen Angel. We're going to hopefully sell some books, and
Hell yeah.
and the other two people who are with me who are going to be speaking write fiction. So even though this is technically fiction, not more than technically, it is fiction, but it is technically a true crime. I'm going to be able to tell them that same way I've just told you about the real crimes and how they're depicted in the book. So should be fun.
And I'm gonna make a note right now to text you tonight, and we'll schedule the next one.
Good.
Mike. Schedule. There we go. Because otherwise I will forget, because I'm on a hamster wheel of these podcasts. They just fly in front of me and they fly behind me. And
I'm sure.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Well, thanks once again. Thank you very much. And I hope that your listeners and viewers like these stories. I think I kind of open up a little bit of the world that they're not into or don't know about. So
absolutely. I mean, I think you give a peek into, the world ain't nice, and there is fucked up shit, for lack of a more formal way to say it. I mean, like, it's not just like, oh, that's in Syria. Like, no, it's here, and you do need it's not a cold view of the world to, lock your door, look over your shoulder. Like, it's just smart. And I mean, above all else, I think that's probably the value in it. But Mike, let's wrap this one up. Good luck on your library talks. Good luck on your surgery. I'll shoot you a text. We'll schedule the next one. And guys, please go in the description, buy the book. It's a fantastic book. It's a terrifying book. And yeah, man, can't wait for the next one.
Thank you, Tom.
Mike, much love, brother. Guys, thanks for watching. Please go in the description, buy the book. Go buy Cricket Brooklyn. Go buy Homicide's My Business. Luigi the Zip. If you're not ready for Satan, just go to Luigi. He's a little more lovable. And yeah, till next time. Mike.